Hello, welcome to the Lewiston Tribune podcast. This is episode number 25. I'm Matt Bainey, managing editor of the Tribune, and I'm joined today by Elaine Williams. Elaine is the business editor of the Tribune. Hi, Elaine. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, yes. Good to have you again. Elaine's not here to talk about business today. She's got a really nice column in the Sunday Tribune about her cross-country skiing odyssey, maybe, or saga. And it's a great column, Elaine, and I guess we'll get into the whole story, but recently you returned to Field Springs, and you went cross-country skiing there, your first time there in 5 years, and in your column, you can tell it was really one of those magical trips. Tell us just a little bit about that recent trip you made there.
Well, and I need to start by saying that I had actually been back to Fields Spring, but I had not gotten to Puffer Butte. And Puffer Butte is one of my absolute most favorite parts of the park. And the park is really just a magnificent place. We're really lucky to have it so close to us. But the most recent trip that I took there was in mid-February on a Saturday, and I was cross-country skiing there, and it was just a glorious day. It was like the world's best concierge had shown up and prepared everything for me, right down to snow levels. And so the views were magnificent. I got to see the Seven Devils, which apparently you can't often see from there. You can also see the mountains around Wallowa Lake, so I got to see those. And just the quality of the skiing was fantastic. A lot of times if you're cross-country skiing, you might get your skis loaded with snow, or the conditions might be super slick. And if they're super slick, you have to be very careful about going too fast, which is something that we'll get to here in a second. But on this day, they were Goldilocks. The snow was soft, and the gliding was just great. So I had probably one of the best skiing days of my life, really, in February. It was fantastic.
So no matter the circumstances, it would have been a memorable day, this recent trip. But there's even more to it. Maybe start from the beginning. Tell us about how this whole saga kind of started for you.
Okay, well, so this goes back to 2020, February, and it was right before the pandemic hit. We were kind of starting to hear things in the background about the pandemic, but we really didn't know how terrible it was going to be. So I went up to Fields Spring with a couple of friends, and we were going to ski up to the warming hut at Puffer Butte, which we did. But on that particular day, the snow was thick but really icy. And so on the way back from Puffer Butte, I fell. And at the time, I didn't really think it was that serious. A lot of times you fall when you're skiing and you get bruised up. But then when I stood up, there was something that just didn't feel right. And so I decided that I was going to take my skis off and that we would walk back to the car. And my friends were super supportive. There wasn't any question about, well, should we or should we not? But a lot of times you would do a loop, but I knew that was not a good idea. And so it really hit me when we got back to the car. I was driving, and I couldn't put my car keys into my ignition with my right hand, which is my dominant hand. And that's certainly something that had never happened to me before. But once again, I wasn't too concerned. We drove back to Lewiston. I thought, okay, well, urgent care is going to close in a little bit. I don't want to have to mess with that tomorrow. It was a Sunday. The next day was a work day, so I didn't want to have that interfere with my work day. So I just went into urgent care. And there they told me that I had damaged a ligament, and they put me in a brace. And I kind of thought that was going to be the end of it. But it turned out that I needed surgery to repair that. And even though overall everything was minor, I really kind of had a lot of firsthand experience in the weeks that followed about how important it is to have an opposable thumb. I mean, there's no doubt to me now about what a great advantage it is, because I couldn't button my clothing. I couldn't eat. Well, I could eat, but I mean, if you've ever tried to eat a bowl of soup with your left hand, it's really not pretty. It's difficult. It's messy. It affected how I slept. But the thing that was pretty scary was the fact that it was really difficult to type and write, and driving was difficult. And those are three things that are really basic things that every journalist needs to do every single day. I mean, even if you're not driving somewhere, you never know when there's going to be a fire somewhere, or just maybe a store is closing and you need to jump in your car and go to see what is going on. And so all of those things combined just made everything that I did on a day-to-day basis a lot more complicated. I could walk and I could run, and those were great things, but pretty much everything else was severely, it was just, I had to think of new ways to do things or take longer, and I just kept thinking about how lucky I was that it wasn't more severe, because even as it was there was a lot of inconvenient things that went with it. And the other thing that was really interesting about all this is that when I got my surgery, everything still seemed pretty normal. The only people who were wearing face masks when I got the surgery were the physician that did the surgery, and then the nurses in the operating room. No one else it was an outpatient surgery, so no one else in the clinic had a face mask. By the time that the cast came off the first time, because I had two casts, but by the time the cast came off the first time, most places were not doing business in person. Everybody had to wear face masks. I think that in the waiting room, they either had chairs taped off or turned upside down. So not only were they encouraging people to be 6 feet apart, but they were also trying to make it really super inconvenient for you to sit closer, even if you wanted to. And at that stage too, my daughter was home from college. She had been she is a Boise State University graduate, and she had been away from she had been in Boise attending BSU. She was home, and I was no longer working in person at the office. The Tribune, during the pandemic, most of us worked from home, so I was working from home. So just the world was just, in that short span of time, had just dramatically shifted. Yes.
So it's interesting, your injury and then the pandemic stuff all happened at the same time, and it must have seemed to you like so much had changed suddenly. You're dealing with that and dealing with the lockdown situation. What was it like? I mean, we all experienced that, but boy, you got a double dose of it.
Well, and I think we were all going through a lot of uncertainty, and I think it's really easy now to forget how much uncertainty there was even at the first part of the pandemic. We didn't know really much about how COVID spread. We didn't know how quickly we would the economy would rebound. We didn't know how many people were going to get sick, how severely they were going to get sick, and just how equipped medical teams would be to deal with a higher volume of patients. And so there were a lot of layers. And once again, I go back to the fact that I was so lucky because my husband and I, we both stayed employed. Our daughter was able to get employment that summer, but things that I think we all took for granted, we were giving a lot more thought to, like how do you safely interact with your friends? How do you safely do your job and navigating new technologies? So there was just a lot of uncertainty, and a little bit for me, the way that this played out, I don't know if it was just because of just some of the malaise that was happening, I think, to many of us, or the fact that maybe my body was expending more energy healing from this injury, but I wasn't running as much, and then I was home, and so I started to eat a lot more, and at any rate, so my hiatus from cross-country skiing ended up coinciding with a fairly significant weight gain, and at any rate, and so all of this is happening, and once again, I had great friends. The Tribune, I think we did a great job as a newsroom of figuring out what to do and how to cover news, but it was all very, very complicated. So at any rate, it's December now of 2020, and I'm having some difficulty breathing, and it's kind of unexplained. It's not related to COVID. But at any rate, that December, I had pretty much decided that I wasn't going to cross-country ski anymore because it just didn't seem like a wise thing to do. And at any rate, so it was just after Christmas, and kind of out of nowhere, I got this text from a friend, and she was like, I know you're a cross-country skier. My birthday this year is a cross-country ski trip. So do you want to go? And I looked at the text and I was like, absolutely yes. And it really, to me, I kind of feel like it was a message from God. And that's like no exaggeration, because it was sort of it's a wise decision to go back to doing this thing you love. And it just, it felt very much like the right thing to do. So, so her birthday celebration wasn't till March, and it's the end of December. So I didn't want my inability to ski to interfere with her birthday celebration. So I started planning, and I texted a friend of mine who is a registered nurse and a skier. And then I asked her if we could go to Palouse Divide, because Field Springs is an incredible place when the snow is good, but when the snow isn't good, it's really technical. Palouse Divide, on the other hand, the terrain there is really forgiving, and so I figured between the terrain being easier to navigate, and then being with a really good friend who had a lot of medical expertise, I kind of had all the bases covered for a safe return. And we went skiing, and it was a marvelous day. I just remembered how much I liked, being out in the snow and finding or being able to be places where you're not with a ton of people, and just to really be immersed in nature, and to smell pine trees. So we had a great day, and I don't remember how much I skied that winter, but when my friend's birthday celebration rolled around, I went, and it was we stayed at Laxall Lodge, and then we went skiing at Lolo Pass, where I had never gone skiing before, and all of it was just great. And so at that stage, I was back skiing, and then that led to other changes, including it kind of launched me losing the weight, which really improved my health and just put me on a better course in just so many different ways. And once again, I don't think that this is really that unique. I think a lot of us thought we were doing pretty well during COVID, and then we look back on that time and we're like, oh, like there were, once again, we were doing the best we could, but it was complicated, and we didn't know necessarily from one day to the next what things were going to be open, what things were going to be closed, and even just sometimes, basic things like, are we going to have enough toilet paper in the house?
Right.
So at any rate, so returning to skiing really kind of helped me find more normalcy again, and was part of how I found I found, quite frankly, new strength in all of it, having faced the challenges that that time held.
Yeah. Well, thank God for that text. And it's interesting to hear you say, right away you said yes. You would kind of resigned yourself that you were a retired skier. Why do you think immediately you said, yes, I'm in?
Well, so the friend who texted is a really good friend. We had done Bible study together before COVID, and partly because it was coming from her, I really kind of felt God's hand, and so that made me feel more confident that it was the right thing to do. And yeah, so I think that was the key thing. It was going to be a great opportunity to reconnect with some people who I hadn't seen quite as much during COVID, and it just felt like there were a number of things that made me feel confident that it was going to be a safe trip and a good time to reconnect with some people.
Okay. Well, hearing you describe these trips, it sounds great, but do tell us, Elaine, what is it about cross-country skiing that really appeals to you?
There is an adventure in it. One of the things that's interesting is that the warming hut on Puffer Butte is about 1.5 miles away from the parking lot, but in that 1.5 miles, you feel like you are worlds away from civilization. There's some views when you're heading up this curvy trail that leads to the butte, where you're in trees, but then beyond the trees in the distance you can see Waha, and that view in particular is incredibly amazing to me because I've tried to capture it in pictures a number of times, and it's just something that you have to be there to experience. One of the many things that is great about cross-country skiing is that it can be incredibly cold, but you start to ski and you get really, really warm. So it's a way to be outside in the winter, which a lot of times in the winter the temptation is to stay inside. But once I'm cross-country skiing in the winter, it makes me feel like winter is just its own special season because it's a time that I can ski.
Yeah. You're making a good sales pitch here. If someone wanted to try cross-country skiing, what advice would you have for them?
I would start by going somewhere that you can rent skis, and two of the places that are closest to Lewiston to do this are Mount Spokane and Schweitzer. And before you go, you would want to go online just to check the hours to see when they're open. I was actually looking on the Mount Spokane website today, and the business that does ski rental recommends making advance reservations. So I would go someplace that you could rent skis, and then take a lesson if possible. The other thing that is just a good thing to do whenever you're skiing is a lot of times the places are remote and there really isn't a place to check in. But if there's an office, like at Fields Spring, there is an office. And so it's always a good idea to pop in and just let people know that you're going to be out on the trails, even if you already have purchased the pass. The other thing too is that sometimes it's really tempting not to purchase the pass, and I would say you always do purchase the pass because people work really hard in these areas to make them safe, to do things that make the whole experience more pleasant, like keeping the restrooms clean. So it's a good idea to support them. But at any rate, for a beginner, I would rent skis first, and take a lesson if you can, and just see if you like it. And also just understand that the first few times that you go, you're probably going to fall a lot, and you're going to use a lot more energy than you would once you get the hang of it. Mm-hmm. So the first couple of times are not really a good way to judge whether or not you actually like skiing or not. By about the third or fourth time, things start to click, and that's when you can find a lot of, or that's when it gets to be a lot more fun.
Okay. You've got some of your gear here. Tell us about some of this stuff.
Okay, and I know that other people bring even more safety gear than I do, so this is probably like the minimum amount, because you have to remember that this is a wilderness journey. And so you know, and once again, even if you don't go that far, you're still out in the woods. So a few things that I do. You'll see that I purposely brought more than one water bottle because you want to bring as much water as you feel comfortable carrying. This is a reflective vest.
Pick that up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is a reflective vest, and hopefully you don't get lost. But if you do, this can be helpful in terms of helping park staff find you if you're wearing something that's bright. This is my whistle, and this is something that I learned to take with me because of paddling. One of the things that's interesting if you paddle around here is that often law enforcement will check on you even if you haven't done anything wrong, and they're looking for they want to make sure you have a life jacket on, but they always ask you if you have a whistle. And once again, I learned that paddling, and then realized that it's actually really a good thing to take when you're out skiing or anywhere that you're going to be a little bit remote. I even take it cycling with me. So this is actually probably one of my biggest pieces of safety gear that I take everywhere I go. If I'm regardless of what activity you're doing, anytime you're somewhere that you may not know the lay of the land, you want to take a map. And so this is the map. This is actually the map that I used at Fields Spring when I was there in February. So that's why it's a little wrinkly. Don't rely on your phone to help navigate. Probably it's going to work, but if there's a paper copy of a map at the beginning of the trail, I always grab one. And then if not, I take a picture of the map, any map at the trail with my phone. Mm-hmm. You want to have as many ways to figure out where you are as possible, and then just be mindful when you're out on the trail. I take a pair of extra gloves. I can't see very well, so I make sure that I have my reading glasses so that I can read the map. This is not mission critical, but I have this fabulous pair of ski pants that I wear. They're water resistant. They have zippered pockets so I don't lose my keys. So if you can find a pair of water resistant pants, it's always nice, because I still fall. I've been cross-country skiing since I was 12 or 13 years old, but I still fall, and it's nice to not be super wet when you fall. And actually, it leads me to another thing that's really important, which is that You don't want to wear any cotton. You always want to wear wool or synthetics, because if you do get wet, wools and synthetic fabric are going to help you get dry a lot faster than cotton. And then you'll want to put everything you have in a backpack, so that it's just not flying all over the place. I always wear boots to the trailhead, and part of that is because I keep my snowshoes with me, and if skiing conditions are really bad, then I have boots and I can just go snowshoeing instead of skiing. And then the reason I have my vest here with me is to demonstrate that you, in addition to whatever gear you have, or in addition to whatever you're wearing, you always want to have an extra layer. And then the final thing, and once again, this is just a baseline. You want, if you're going to have lunch or something like that, you bring that along. But then you want to have some extra food, just in case you get lost. And something like trail mix that has a lot of calories is really ideal. And you basically bring something that's high in calories, and you just plan not to eat it. For the longest time, I had this bag of trail mix that I just kept in my freezer, and I just kept bringing it out, and I think it went on, a dozen trips or something like that. But the idea was that if I got in a bind, I'd have some good calories to keep me going, to help me until I either found my way out or someone found me.
Right. Well, great, Elaine. Thank you. Anything else about cross country or your cross country saga that you wanted to mention?
Other than just, it really is. It was a great journey related to my friends and my faith. All of my friends showed up for me in different ways and were supportive in ways I think that many of them don't even know. So it just taught me so much just about how great people are, and just how, if there's something that you love, it really is worth fighting for. Maybe if it seems a little bit challenging, because ultimately it just leads to so many great things.
Oh, well put. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lewiston Tribune podcast, and a reminder that the Tribune podcast is now available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere you get your podcasts, and you can also watch it on the Lewiston Tribune YouTube page and at lmtribune.com. But thanks for joining us for this episode, and we'll be back next week with another episode. And until then, have a great day. Thank you.